Hey guys, I've been wearing these Alpinestar Tech 5s for the last couple of years, and I've really liked wearing these boots, and I would have recommended them to just about anybody that asked me up until I actually crashed in the boots. A couple of months ago I had a pretty nasty spill out riding some single track and actually dropped the bike on my foot in a way that caused a fairly serious foot injury that's still healing.
Oh, goddamn! Ah, fuck. Oh, holy shit. Oh, yeah, I think so. Fuck me. Oh. Woo. Ow. Oh man, I crunched my foot. That's gonna be a fucking bad thing. The rest of me's fine. Shit. Oh god.
I've since upgraded to the Gearne SG-10s, and I'm having much better experience with them, though I can't really do a solid review on those boots yet because I haven't actually crashed in them very much. But I wanted to take this opportunity, since I've traded out of the Tech 5s, to show you guys a little bit about what I did like about them and why I think maybe they're not a good boot for super hard enduro stuff like I ride. I'm actually going to be passing them to a guy that rides with us a little bit, but doesn't ride to the kind of craziness level that John and I sometimes get into. So let's first look at some of the things that I really liked about these boots. First off, I think one of the biggest selling features of these Alpinestar boots is they're extremely comfortable. From the moment you slide these boots on, it feels like you've stuck your foot in an UGG or a house slipper or something like that. I really mean that seriously. They're quite comfortable to wear. And that's definitely a major selling feature, especially when you're trying boots on the showroom floor at one of the motorcycle shops, because it's really the only thing that you can test on the floor. So it's definitely a big plus for them. And I can understand why they would go that direction, and I think there's definitely a niche for boots like these. One of the things that makes them really comfortable, not only to wear but to walk in, is they have the glued sole rather than the stitched sole. And so they have quite a bit of flex here in the toe area, which makes them a lot less stiff, both for walking and when you initially get them and they're not quite broken in yet. It makes it really easy to modulate the brake lever and to get your toe underneath the shift lever and actually operate the motorcycle. So there's a lot to be said for that approach. Another thing that I've really liked about these, and actually I wish Gearne would transport into their boots, is the buckle system. Now, it's probably a little bit hard to see exactly how this works on video, but the buckle system with these is it's not particularly unique. It doesn't initially look that different, but the way that these flip closed in kind of an alternating pattern, and just the style of the buckle themselves, how you get your fingers under them to open them, always had really good luck with these buckles. So comfort and usability, definitely high on the scale with these boots. I haven't actually weighed these on a scale yet, but they do seem a little bit lighter just by feel of hand than the Gearne SG-10s that I'm running now. Other than that, they're sort of an all-around decent boot, really easy to wear, easy to use. Now, let's get to what I don't like so much about them. It's not really fair to compare these boots to something like the SG-10 or the SG-12 because they're not quite in the same price category. So I wouldn't expect boots like these to perform quite at the level of a top-end boot like the SG-12. That being said, even for a more budget-minded boot, these Alpinestars, at least the Tech 5s that I have here, are just a little bit light on armor. I think it's one of the things that makes them sort of easier to wear, but it's definitely a trade-off that you want to keep in mind, and for me it's what ended up selling me on upgrading off of these boots. The biggest area that they really lack armor is in the heel and calf area of the boot. As you can see here, there's quite a bit of flex in this material, and really all there is just this ribbed leather here. It's pretty soft, there's not a ton there. A little bit of impact protection down in the heel area, but as you get up to your Achilles and you go up your calf here, there's just not that much there, especially up at the top here. I'd hate to go down hard in these boots and anything that was going to impact the back. I don't think they do a lot to protect you. The other thing that kind of turned me off about these boots, because I'm still feeling the pain of it, is that the flexibility that I mentioned in the toe area, it seems like a really good thing in that they're very comfortable to use and they're very comfortable to shift and operate the bike in. However, in my case, I went down with my foot something like that and actually had the bike fall on my foot and crunch it like that. You can actually see the tear mark still. Now, I'm pretty convinced that based on the flexibility differences between these Tech 5s and the Gearne boots that I'm running now, These are just a lot more flexible in this area. And what ended up happening is I was got my foot folded to the extent where I actually tore some of the tendons and the muscle tissue that's in my toe there, and really kind of messed up the joint quite a bit. And I don't think that that would have happened in a stiffer boot sole. Basically, the only thing protecting me was this layer of the sole, and these glued soles are intentionally designed to be just a little bit more flexible. So I took a pretty serious injury wearing these boots that I think would have been prevented by a stiffer type boot. Another issue that I had with these boots is that over time they lost some of their waterproofing. I think that initially they did quite a good job, but towards the end of the time I spent with these boots, I believe that they started to take in water around the seams of this sort of mid-foot leather area. It's actually one of the spots where there's quite a bit of flex, and I think that material just gets thin or wears through or something like that. So don't expect them to stay waterproof sort of for life. That's unlikely to happen. I want to give these boots sort of an across-the-board rating on a couple of different metrics to give you a sense of where they fit into the picture. We here at Wannabes really strongly believe that just about every piece of gear has its place somewhere on the spectrum. There's always going to be a trade-off between the price that you pay and the return that you get. And it's important to understand where a particular product fits in that spectrum so that you can match your budget to your needs and get the most bang for your buck, which doesn't always mean getting the cheapest or getting the most expensive. There's often something in between. So, in terms of ultimate protection, which is really why we wear boots in the first place, I would give these Alpinestar Tech 5s probably a 3 out of 5. I think that they'll do a pretty good job of keeping you from some of the scuffs, scrapes, and bruises that you typically expect in motocross or enduro setting. But I don't think, at least in my experience, that they're really going to stand up to some of the really higher speed, higher force impacts that you might experience in a heavier crash. On comfort, I would absolutely rate these boots a 5 out of 5. Comfort is by far their best feature, and it's the one really strong reason why you might consider running these boots, particularly if you just don't think that your riding style warrants the absolute toughest in protection, which, let's be honest, for a lot of people, in a lot of different riding styles, on a lot of different bikes, a 3 out of 5 protection is probably going to be just fine. In terms of durability, I would give these boots probably a 4 out of 5. There wasn't anything that stood out to me while I was using them that really told me that these boots were going to last for a long time. But that's pretty typical of a lot of enduro gear. I mean, it takes a beating. You really can't expect it to last forever. But at the same time, there just wasn't anything about these boots that wore out particularly fast. I feel like I got my money's worth out of them. I think I paid a couple of $100 on Amazon or something like that for these pair. The sole withstood, the use that I put it through. You can tell that there's some chafing from the claws of the foot peg. I'm not a particularly big guy, weigh in the 160, 170 range, maybe a little bit more with gear on, so I'm not putting a ton of stress on them. But that being said, I know that some people wear through these pads. I think these are changeable, but honestly, other parts of the boot wore out before the sole. So the sole definitely stood up to the use that I was giving them. None of the buckles broke, and there's really no damage to them other than where I went down in them and actually took a chunk out, sort of collapsing my foot. So I think 4 out of 5 is a good rating for their durability. Now, as much as I've bitched and moaned about the glued sole as opposed to the stitched sole, again, the glued sole is a little bit more flexible. The stitched sole is going to be thicker and give more support. It is really nice. The glued soled boots, I think, look a lot better. They don't have that metal buckle on the front that comes off frequently. I've had really good luck with these, and I think that in terms of style, they have worked out really well. They look nice, and they sort of walk around really well. And I will say that I think that the glued soles held up fairly well. It's a good mark in their durability category. Very often with boots that I've run that are stitched sole, even the nicer ones, that metal buckle that goes across the front, the protection piece, often comes off. I know they're replaceable, but the screw holes strip out and all kinds of stuff sort of goes wrong with those in my experience. It's one of the reasons I went with these boots in the first place, is they do have this nice sort of glued sole, looks just like a shoe, works like a shoe. And I definitely think that that's in these boots' favor if you're looking for that level of protection from your boot. I think these are definitely a good option in that respect. The last metric I want to rate these boots on is their value. Value is really a subjective term, and I think it has a lot to do with what you're expecting to get out of the particular piece of gear, and what kind of a price range you're interested in investing in that protection. In my case, I would have said these boots were really high value, again, right up until I crashed in them, and the pain from that injury has been with me for a couple of months now. And after experiencing that, I'm definitely willing to invest quite a bit more in quite a bit heavier protection, and I'm also willing to sacrifice a little bit of comfort and some of the other features to get that higher protection value. So for me, after experiencing a crash in these boots, their value went down a little bit. But that being said, I still think there's a place for boots like these. Would still definitely recommend them to guys that are riding in sort of the medium range, or maybe just aren't going that fast, or something where ultimate protection is not really your thing. So I think in terms of value, and given that they have a little bit of a lower price point, I probably can safely rate these boots as a 4 out of 5 in terms of overall value, to give you a sense of sort of where they peg in terms of your investment versus your return. Before we wrap, I just want to remind you guys about this helmet chin mount project that we here at Wannabes are working on. So we have been going through and designing these custom chin mounts that specifically fit a whole bunch of different helmets. They've got a lot of really cool features in that they're low profile, so they fit on the chin of the helmet in some really nice ways depending on this particular style of the helmet, but there's no damage to the actual helmet. We've seen a lot of guys that are drilling, screwing, zip tying, whatever stuff to the face of their helmet. And while I do have a bundle of wires here, there's nothing in any of this setup that's done any permanent damage to the helmet. So we think that's a really positive selling feature. There's a bunch more about these shin mounts. We've got a couple of videos out about them, so I won't take up too much of your time here. But go check them out, link in the description. Really appreciate your support. You guys supporting us on the chin mount project is really helping us to do more of the gear reviews and the ride content that you guys seem to really enjoy, and we really appreciate that engagement. We look forward to seeing you next time. Thank you so much. Talk soon.